So I've been growing a lot of cilantro here over the last several months. I usually start my cilantro pretty early in the late winter, early spring. I do start them indoors, and we don't have too much frost in our area, so I'm not too worried about it freezing out here. So I can start my cilantro pretty early. Typically, we don't have a big problem with it being too hot here and the cilantro bolting very quickly, getting very leggy, stocky, and starting to set its flowers. But this last week, we had temperatures of 109, 106, 102, which is a little unusual here for the Pacific Northwest, but we've had this heat wave here. And this cilantro here on the right actually was partially in the shade, but it was so hot that that's why it's kind of looking a little bit wear. The one here in the center here, I kept it under the roof overhang with no sun at all for the 3 day period where it was really hot. And as you can see, it survived much better than the one on the right. Now, when you go ahead and start cilantro, most of you, whether you do it in your pots or your raised garden bed or directly into your soil, most of you will start after the last bit of frost is occurring during your season. Now, in terms of prepping the soil, cilantro likes usually about a neutral pH of 7 or lower on the cilantro on the soil. And so, if your soil is a little bit on the acidic side, better yet. But if it's just neutral, that's okay too. I usually amend my soil if I'm doing it in dirt. I'll go ahead and add a couple handfuls of compost soil because it does like the rich soil. And so I'll go ahead and dress maybe the last half to a couple inches on top, where I'll go ahead and mix it with the potting mix and a little bit of compost mixed in. I usually don't bother with compost soil on the very bottom. And then what you'll do is you'll lay down your cilantro seeds. You'll kind of pat it down semi-firm. Usually I plant my cilantro seeds about a half inch to a full inch below the tops, and then I'm gonna pat down some additional soil on top, and I'll water it thoroughly. Now, the reason why they're in these little dollar little plastic containers that I bought at the dollar store is because I like to water it from the bottom up, just so that way I'm not watering over tender younger leaves. Plus, also it just wicks up and does a better job. It does like plenty of moisture. Now, what I do is when I do start the seeds indoors, or even if I do them outdoors, which I'm doing over here on the far right, I planted succession growing cilantro, so I'll have cilantro throughout the growing season. I went ahead and I kept it under the roof overhang so it's not in direct sun until they sprout. And then what I did was I covered the top of the container with press and seal wrap, and so that way the tops aren't drying out until it starts sprouting. And so what I did was put the press and seal on top, and then I'll take a peek through there every 3 to 5 days, and once they start sprouting, then I'll take the top off. And then what I do is just like watering tray, I'll go ahead and water from the bottom up. Now, after it starts sprouting, I make sure that that it's getting a good morning sun. And then what I do is I try to put it in some place like over here where there's some sort of afternoon shade, because our temperatures are fairly reasonable in the morning. We get it into the low to mid 60s, and then it takes until past noon before we get into the 70-degree weather. But we're going to hit about 81 today, and that'll be until it won't be until about 1 o'clock until the afternoon. And if the sun is out, it's going to kind of beat on the leaves of both the cilantro and the dill plant. And so what I do is I put it here on this side of the house, so that way it gets the afternoon shade, and so that way it's not in direct, constant beating down sunlight. Now, once this plant has matured like it does now, I'm going to hit it with the water soluble Miracle Grow food fertilizer, which I've shown you before. And it gives it the extra energies to keep on providing the leaves that I want. And I'm going to use the cut and grow method. And so I'm not going to pinch off because I don't have time to sit there and pinch off every cilantro plant and to get it more bushy like I would with the basil plant. What I'm going to just do is just take some shears, scissors, and I'll just start chopping off the tops of that because I'll throw it in salads and other things in my little pico de gallo mix. And so what I'll basically do is instead of trimming it down and making it bushy, I just basically, since I've kind of pack rode the seeds inside these containers, what I'll do is just take some scissors and knock off about 2 to 4 inches every so often. Now, to give you kind of a heads up, the cilantro grows fairly fast as the weather gets warmer. Here in the Pacific Northwest and most regions where it gets really hot, I like to grow my cilantro first thing in the spring, early spring. And it does really well in cool weather in spring and fall. I mean, it does like full sun, but not dreadfully hot sun. Because it will start getting real leggy or tall and stocky, and then it will send out as flowers, and then after that, the leaves start kind of tasting a little different. Along with it just bolts too often for you to have to sit there and pinch off the flowers every single time. So I'll grow mine early in the spring, late in the fall, or in any time in the fall. And then if I do grow in the summer, which I do still like to do, I just try to make sure it's in a part of my growing area where it gets a little bit afternoon shade. Now, on top of getting the full sun during the mornings and middays, I also will check to see if it needs additional water on a really hot day. So when it was, running 99 degrees to 109, I went ahead and came out here about 3 times to make sure that there was enough water in the reservoir. It does like moist soil, and so I went ahead and made sure that I checked on it a couple times throughout the day. Like I said before, when you're getting your soil bed ready, whether it's in a raised bed or pots, throw in a little bit of compost soil if you can. It does help the cilantro quite a bit. Always keep your soil moist because if it starts drying out, it can kill the plant. Or on top of that, when it has a moisture problem and isn't getting enough moisture, a lot of times it has a tendency to bolt a lot quicker. When it's kind of like this size and you want it to keep on growing really well, hit it with a little bit of water soluble plant food. I use the Miracle Grow water soluble plant food, and I'll put that in the little reservoir down below there, and it keeps on growing really well. The leaves are nice and big and hardy, and I can just do the cut and grow method and just chop off the tops of them and then just keep on letting it grow throughout the season. It's here in the corner, and so that way it's getting the afternoon sun or afternoon shade, I mean, and that way it isn't roasting when it's the hottest part of the day. Um, what else should I let you know? Oh, yeah. If you're growing less bunch method and you're just kind of succession growing and you're kind of growing and spacing it out, you do want to go ahead and do pinch off and try to make it as bushy as possible. So as this keeps on sprouting and the main stems grow, I kind of tend to, as the side shoots grow, I'll go ahead and chop off the center stem, and so that way it gets more bushy. Anytime you see flowers coming onto the cilantro plant, you want to go ahead and pinch them off if you plan on still harvesting your cilantro. Let me show you here. So I have this cilantro that was growing here. Unfortunately, it was getting a little bit hot over here. It was getting a little bit less shade. Plus, this one was one that I grew in the late winter, early spring. And as you can see, it's already flowered and it's already setting its seed. And so I did harvest this about 4 or 5 times, but it's already gone to seed here. And this will take a little while through the growing season. It's right now, it's just kind of immature. And eventually these seeds will turn brown. And you don't want to pick your seeds too early. What I do is I wait until this thing is completely brown and dried out. When you start seeing a couple seeds naturally fall to the ground, then I'll chop off the bottoms of the stems here and take them inside, and I'll just shake off or rub the seeds out. The reason why I could do such heavy bunch growing on cilantro this year is because I took those seeds from last year and I ended up with thousands and thousands of seeds. And so as you can see through the stems here, I planted probably 100 seeds in this about a 12-inch container. And because I did bunch growing, the weaker ones don't grow, and then the bigger ones kind of push their way up. And what'll happen is they seem to kind of feed off of each other in terms of giving each other a little bit of shade. Plus, I can do a little bit of cut and grow with this type of method. And so what I'll do is this afternoon I'm going to make a little bit of pico de gallo and some fire roasted salsa. So what I'll do is come through here and just shear off the top about 4 inches.